Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman, and our next guest, Phil Sharkey of the Higher Authority. Phil, always a pleasure to have you on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Likewise, Jonathan, good to talk with you again. It's a pleasure to go over the subject matter that we talk about, and I think I have some interesting topics for you today.
I know you always bring us some wonderful tidbits from the world of I was going to say the world of espionage, but I guess it's counter-espionage. You know, you're trying to stop those folks from coming in the door in the first place.
Exactly.
You want to talk about the door opener, so to speak, today, the resume and the presentation of a resume.
It's funny you mentioned that, Jonathan, because one of our catchphrases, one of our big touts to clients is be proactive, not reactive. So much time and effort and money and the survivability of your company can be literally saved if you do a program preemptively and make sure. And again, I get this a lot when I'm out speaking and talking about it. We're not Big Brother. I'm not trying to come down on any person. We do nothing without signed release and authorization. But there's something different between, and we'll get into this, resume claims of exaggerating or boasting about yourself compared to when you cross that line, Jonathan, you're flat out lying. And I'm meeting you today and say, hey, Jonathan, nice to meet you. I'm a liar. So if you're lying on day one, how can you ever really be trusted by that employer?
Not a great sign. So let's jump into that. And then I have a topic in the construct of the world that we're operating in. And, you must see it all the time. So why don't you jump in and talk about some statistics that you have on resume falsification or embellishments or untruths. So I know you always bring some great numbers with you.
Thanks, Jonathan. And funny you should ask. I do happen to have a survey from monster.com, a reputable, well-known entity from last year. And it said that they did a survey and it came back with 66% of the candidates exaggerated their skills and competencies on a resume. And of that, they had a subgroup of 400 applicants who admitted to 78% stretched the truth about themselves. So again, we usually see about 30% turn out fraudulent in a full background check. Now here's a resume and people are admitting almost close to 80% are exaggerating the truth. Now I'm from the school where I always was taught to best put forward on your resume, try to make yourself look as best as you can to get in that door and get the job. So I understand the pressure of people. But Jonathan, once they go too far and they stretch that line, to me, they're falsifying. And again, they're doing that handshake with you and the employer hires a company like us to find out, and they're going to be ruled out immediately. Of this 400, 60% of the applicants claim to have a mastery in skills for which they either had basic knowledge or absolutely no knowledge at all. And again, when I'm training and I'm talking to the young people of the world, actually all of us that are getting jobs, I really don't understand that claim. I know you want to get in and get the job. What we found out from some clients is that even if they get in, if you don't have the skills, it's not going to last very long. So
that's the one that's shocking, because it would seem to me that some of these hard skills anyways would be, if they're core to a job, you'd be found out pretty quickly. Maybe a little more difficult with some soft skills, but certainly the hard skills.
Absolutely. So even if you get past the process of pre-employment background screening and finding out if you're being truthful, then what happens to you? Now you're in a job where many of these skills are really necessary to keep your job. And if they find out very quickly that you don't know what you're doing, you're just really wasting your time as well as the employer. So again, that's a big claim that I see a lot of. We have another claim of 50% said they had worked at some jobs longer in order to omit a successing employer. So this is a big one for me. Basically, they expand their time frame. I just had one this week, in fact, said they worked 2 years at a job. We found out it was 4 months. So again, Jonathan, from our side, the unknown is almost worse than the known. So now you have gaps in employment on both sides of that time frame. And the thought is, are you omitting a job that ended out poorly? Or were you in jail? How are you, what was happening during those other 16 months that you claimed employment? And that's a big red flag for everyone.
So tell us a little bit about your, not the secret sauce in your process, but you're looking to find inconsistencies, and the inconsistencies open up windows to other potential inconsistencies or out and out mistruths or lies.
Absolutely. And again, it's not it's not a Big Brother attack. It's not going a deep dive into people. It's a basic format of, if you said you worked for 4 years and you worked for 2, what's going on? Is there an explanation? Many times with our report, outside of just ruling someone out, our clients can go back to you and say, hey, Jonathan, what happened here? Can you fill in these holes for me? I have a report that says you worked, a year when you're claiming 3. And many times this is a chance for the applicant to jump out in front, like, and explain, well, it was some work I wasn't compensated for, that I believe I was there. See how they answer that question for the employer.
So your message to your client is we've discovered the inconsistency. Now it's your job to try and weave together, hear the story, find out what's going on. Excuse me. I would imagine some of this is, in some ways, some of it is not necessarily meant to deceive. I think, as you look longitudinally at some people's careers and histories, 20 years, and if they've got gaps, sometimes it's difficult on paper to articulate that.
Absolutely. And especially as you go back in time, Jonathan. So as it gets more dated, we're much more understanding when someone is claiming a job from 5 or 6 years ago and they're a little off on their time frame, or even greatly off. When it's more recent, then it seems to be more glaring. But we have some employers that go back 5 years of history, some go back 7, and some go back 10 years. And of course, when you get to the 10-year history, you get much more inconsistency on the time frame. But the claims of having job skills that you don't have. There was another person, they said 41% use a director's title when they actually had a title of a manager or lower in the corporate landscape. Again, this comes out, we talked to human resources, we talked to your former supervisor. I just had one a month ago where he said, no, that job description, he goes, that's my job description. That's what I do. And again, to claim that, sometimes maybe he filled in a day or two doing that, but to make that as a claim as your job, then all hell's going to break loose. It's just going to look bad for you.
And I imagine people do it for a myriad of reasons, but the bottom line is, as an employer, you want to be able to get the as close to the truth as possible as the story, so that you can set expectations. If somebody says, "Hey, I filled in for a CFO, but I really never was a CFO," then we need to understand that in terms of the hiring, and there's potential implications. I may downgrade a salary. I may still decide I want that candidate, but at least I've level set the expectations.
Absolutely. And a good background check is really a tool for the employer to use, not to totally discredit someone and rule them out. Of course, we have some with major criminal records or inconsistencies that are just too great. But when it's a situation like this, they can go back and in the second or third interview and say, hey, Jonathan, we're really considering you, but we see a gap in employment. We see a claim here that the background screening firm came back and said that seemed to be not what you did. Help me out here. Help me help you, like that movie would say. Could you explain it to me and make me, feel better about this situation?
So, Phil, I want to ask you the question that I was thinking about before in the context of the world today, and I know you've been at this for a number of years. Are you seeing that there's this sort of sense that in society at large that it's okay for people to stretch the truth? We hear all the time now in media that it's hard to separate out truth from fact from fiction. Social media being another tool, very difficult to sort of figure out what's the source and whether or not there's truth to it. Are you finding that candidates there's a larger trend for candidates to mimic that trend as well?
Absolutely. And we're shown from our leaders, as I've done on our programming many times, the George Santos situation where, falsifying and building up yourself is almost rewarded compared to, it's almost a joke or a snicker. To me, it's still a huge infraction to me. It's like, I don't understand the thought process at all that people do. And as you mentioned, social media, Jonathan, just briefly, we do a lot of social media searching now. So I tell all my friends, my daughter, her age group, older people too, that, people check. So of course, when there's, I guess from me, my group, it's LinkedIn and Facebook but we check everything: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. And again, you have to be careful, because if you can't go into someone's private account, and there's actually a law called the PIPEDA, which is the Personal Information Protection and Electronics Act. So no one can view your private social media. But Jonathan, today with the young people today, our generation, our world, no one wants to be private. They want their word heard. They want to be out there. They don't want to be private, even against my suggestions. Once it's public, you're like walking down the street. So if you got a Facebook page, which I just had last month, of all marijuana usage and smoking pot and everything, and not that it's not legal, of course it's not illegal in Massachusetts as well as many states. But I just had a client, it's a high-end dog walking company, and their branding, they said, if you can see it, our client can see it. And
Right.
no, we're not going to choose. We're not blaming this person for breaking the law or anything, but that profile doesn't fit what we need to sell to our
with our
clients.
business and what we're trying to portray. Absolutely. It's interesting because I hear oftentimes from younger people, oh, I'm just going to delete that. The challenge with social media is, you may be able to delete it, but what happens if people forward it or somebody else propagated it somewhere else? So, that's really the challenge, is take the conservative approach. If you wouldn't put it out there for your parents to see, don't put it out there for the world to see.
That's a great statement. And we always say, like, you delete something, but it's never really gone. It can always be out there in search engines, and with the ability of our systems to check through the Google and the internet platforms, it really can surface. And we even have people, even when like you said, statement about what you would say in front of your parents or not, we even have people complain about their past job, and employers will see that. And again, how much of a rush do you think they want to rush in when they see this person nothing but complaining about their previous or their current employment? Like, well, what are we taking on here?
Well, it's interesting also, and I think we've come through perhaps a more difficult time in terms of finding candidates, hiring candidates. I think people have, at least I've seen, employers have been willing to, I don't know, let their guard down, be a little more lenient in terms of things, and invariably those types of things come back to bite you. And so if it walks like a duck, invariably it is going to be a duck at some point. You might not see it, and you may be desperate to fill that role, but 3-6 months down the road, you're going to be back out, looking for candidates again.
That you're preaching to the choir. That's what I tell people, and I tell the people, they get sort of angry and they yell, well, marijuana is not illegal. Of course it's not, and it's no, alcohol, whatever you do on your personal time is fine. But we just had another client that's a tree cutting company, and that person's social media showed nothing but marijuana usage. Now, how do you think they had concerns about putting him in a tree 60 feet above the ground? And of course they do. Not pulling on his character at all or questioning him, but how long does marijuana stay in his system? Some people say the effects can be from 1 to 4 or 5 days, or in your system for 30 days. So if something happened, now they're liable, and they do a drug test and it comes back. So that's the problem. Again, not coming down on anyone, not picking on a certain party thing of choice. Exactly. But you got to be aware that people are looking, and they're trying to protect their business.
Well, absolutely. And put it in the construct of the type of work that people are doing. And, you could say, hey, it's just an office job. But at the end of the day, if they're putting extra zeros on numbers and, missing details and things of that nature, then it may have a potential significant negative impact on the business.
Absolutely. So, there's no doubt about it. That's why we're here for those type of, for all clients.
Phil, always wonderful advice, wonderful guidance, great statistics. If people want to get in touch with you, want to talk to you about the Hire Authority, how you can help them to make better hiring choices, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, Jonathan, right on the internet, it's hireauth.com. That's hireauth.com, short for Hire Authority. Toll free. You always get a person answering a phone. It's 888-230-5901. And we do talk to people coast to coast, so that we can work anywheres.
Wonderful. Always great information, Phil. Really appreciate you coming on Radio Entrepreneurs and sharing your wisdom, and hopefully people will reach out and make better decisions. And we'll be right back. And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.